Welcome back to another SuperCoach video with me, JD. You're joining me for the round 3 review, which I thought was going to be an alright week. And then Sunday came around and Shrek, Wits, Oliver all scored big. So that meant comparatively my score wasn't as good. That's okay. 21-1-4 for me. Dropped, about 9,000 ranks for the season. So 23k overall. But that's okay. The thing that's important is that the team value is going up, and that's what a lot of the trades in the first couple of weeks was really about, making sure that the structure was good, get that value going forward. So hopefully that'll even out in future weeks. So for today, we'll go through, of course, my team, my trades, how I'm going to set up for the week ahead, some considerations, all that. But I'll also go through the games because I feel like there's a lot going on. And then we'll also talk about, I guess, some replacement options for Darcy Cameron. And we'll, I guess, touch on LDU a little bit as well when we get to that game. So let's jump into it. All right. Dogs, Lions. Wow, this feels like a forever ago. So what did I do with this game? Oh, I had the vice captain on Dunkley here, and I didn't really like my captain option, so I took a 108, which I mean would definitely pales in comparison to stuff like anyone that had Clary. But yeah, he was alright. This game was really all about Bontempelli because Bontempelli could have gone absolutely massive, but faded away quite badly. I mean, he got 13 clangers here, which must be like a close to all-time record, 6 frees against. Just quite unfortunate. Was, I mean, best on in the first half, and then second half was not good at all. So yeah, this is a very unfortunate score given what happened. McRae bounced back after I traded him, which happens, but that's fine. And then English, who I brought in for Darcy, scored well and went up a fair bit in cash. I think he went up about 40k. Baker was very good, and anyone, including myself, that had Hopper was holding Hopper. This was your loophole on the Friday night, and he delivered 95 in Hopper's absence, which was really nice. Probably not too much else to talk about on the dog side. On the line side, I mean, yeah, Neil was good, and a lot of people traded Neil, but I still think both of those trades were fine. It was done for the right reasons. They're expensive guys that were going to drop off. I mean, McRae's role still didn't look any better. If I check CBAs for the doggies, still 40% CBAs, had 33% forward time again or something like that. So yeah, that role is not good. So that's, I think, completely fine to move on from that. If we check Brisbane, Neil's still up there. This hasn't changed. This is fine. Barry had slightly less this week because he wasn't tagging. Although I think he did move to Bont in the second half, but yeah, not as big of a deal. Ashcroft continued to make some nice money, which is good. Wilmot made nice money, which is good. This score was actually pretty low, and then in the fourth quarter, he had a really, really big fourth quarter. Lots of intercepts, was very good. McKenna, a bit of a down game, but that's fine. He's still making money well, and there's really not too much else to talk about on the line side. All right. Collingwood Richmond. So the big news here is what happened to Darcy Cameron. Let's have a quick look at what his price is, because a lot of people traded him in. He is very highly owned. So he went up 28,000. He's 494 now. Ownership's at 34%. So it doubled basically between round 2 and 3. So he went down on 89, and this is really unfortunate because I think the people that traded to him had the right idea in mind in terms of finding value, and it looked like this was going to pay off. This 89 was on 58% time on ground. So he was looking like he was going to go 120. You paid, for, I should be able to work it out from the numbers I just spoke of. What was it? 28K. So you paid like 470 basically for him. It was going to well and truly outperform that, and you saved a bunch of money. But unfortunately, and this is what we've always said about the mid prices in the rucks, that when they go down, it's quite tricky because like what can you fix them to? I guess we'll talk about a few options. Maybe at the end, because I'm going to get asked a bunch of Grundy questions as well, which means I feel like I have to at least go through to get to Grundy and some of these other rucks before we talk about it. All right, so interesting observation for Collingwood is this team last year had no players that averaged over 100. And then if we look at them now, how many have they got? I think it's like 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a lot of players averaging over 100 now, which is really interesting. Like, is this trend going to continue? Is it just a function of them winning and winning by a lot? So they're getting a lot of the SuperCoach pie. Is it the fact that they've added the kind of like contested possession side to the game that they didn't really have last year with players like Mitchell, who, funnily enough, everyone jumped off, but he's going at 113 so far. Like, Degoe's done well at 112 so far. Sidey, I mean, you don't think Sidey and Pendlebury are going to continue at this rate. Dacos is very good. So maybe these things revert a little bit, but very interesting. Pies look amazing so far. They have looked good in all 3 games, and they're very watchable as well. Enjoying them a lot. The next 3 months is going to be quite interesting with Cameron out. Sorry, not 3 months, like 3 to 4 weeks with Cameron out, because I think that's about the time frame until Cox and potentially Begg are healthy and can come back and ruck. So one player that we may get asked about or may need to keep an eye on is McStay, 350k forward, who may actually get called on to be their solo ruck. If he does go as solo ruck, I actually think we could see potentially some very nice scoring from him. So yeah, just one to keep an eye on. His break even's 59, so I think if you wait a week, you can see if he scores 80 or 90, and then it's potentially like another mid-price we could jump to that then might get ruck status as well. But it's not really a Darcy Cameron replacement. It's more just like this is an interesting cheap alternative because it's not really known what they're going to do with their ruck situation. They do have one 19-year-old who I want to say his name is Steen or Sheen. It's something like that. SH. I cannot find it. Oh, yep, Oscar Steen, Steene, 102k rookie. But yeah, apparently he's too green to play. So I'm not really sure what they do with this situation. It's probably playing like Ash Johnson or McStay in the ruck line. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, what else we're talking about? Like, I don't think Mitchell's really an option to go to still. No, nothing else really for the Pie side. And then Tiger side, Tim Taranto continued to do Tim Taranto things. So he got a lot of possessions and butchered a whole lot more of them. That's about what I expected. Baker looked like an absolute star in this game. So probably helped a little bit by, well, both Taranto and Baker might have been helped a little bit by no Hopper, no Short, kind of stand up a little bit. I mean, Rioli got a lot of the ball, but actually was very poor with it. So only ended up with a 56. But yeah, Tiger's been on the back foot a little bit through the first couple of games, just not clicking. Oh, Tyler Young. I mean, he had his second game, scored a 52. I don't really think he's an option, though. And then Nankervis is interesting. He's actually started well so far. And, oh, actually, there's Samson Ryan we can talk about. So, where are they? Tigers. Yeah, so Nankervis here is 118 over the first 3, and it looks like he's actually doing well, benefiting from Soldo being out, like not playing as a ruck. So the interesting thing is whether they persist with Samson Ryan. I think Soldo's like injured for a little bit longer anyway. But yeah, I mean Ryan was doing okay in this game, but they subbed him out to get a little bit smaller, help their mix. So I think he keeps playing. It's a little bit annoying because this is someone that could have potentially been looked at as a downgrade option if you needed one for a rookie for whatever reason, and then could also be like some ruck cover. He's got a 28 break even, but like, you know, now I feel like you just have to wait a week on him, even if you were considering him. But yeah, no one else really worth talking about here. Hawks North. So yeah, if I was to pick one game for the Hawks to win this year, it would have been this one. I think Mitchell bring out all stops to beat his old mentor, I guess, his old coach as well. And yeah, I mean, Dylan Moore is just, like, he's so good. Sicily got tons of junk. He had 18 marks, which is nuts. They were just kicking around the back line, just through every play. The interesting one to talk about is Will Day, who people will ask, is he potentially an option this week? And look, someone that I might look at. He is now 402k, went up 40k this week, still has a -6 break even. So someone that could potentially make, I don't know, maybe another like 50 to 80k, depending on how he scores over the next few games. What have they got here? Got him going at 90s, and he gets another 70k kind of out of that. Yeah, it's a really tricky price range. It's, you know, reminiscent of what Hewitt started at last year. So if you think Day is a keeper, then you know, that's definitely someone that you could look at. Uh, but I'm not sure he is. He's someone I've got in, you know, fantasy, so I have been watching him kind of closely, but yeah, it's tricky. If you've got like a underperforming, where it's going to come into play is if you've got like a Doherty or a Ridley, might be able to get off one of them today to free up money to then fix up Darcy Cameron, which like I guess is kind of interesting. I could see why you'd want to do that, especially Ridley, who's not a keeper anyway. You go Ridley to Day, free up 95k, and then put it on to English. Sorry, put it on to Darcy Cameron to see who you can get to with whatever money's in your bank. I don't mind that as an option, just thinking out loud. So yeah, those like Sicily and Day are the two really interesting ones. This score could have been much bigger for Sicily, but I guess a lot of it was uncontested and like backwards kicks and stuff, which is why it doesn't score that well for SuperCoach, just despite him being, you know, fairly efficient on too many clangers, few contested touches. Oh, Warple we'll talk about and Mackenzie we'll talk about. They're probably the only other two. All right, so let's have a look at the CBAs for the Hawks. I think Warple held about the same, which is interesting. It just didn't score that well. I didn't think he looked particularly bad, to be honest. So the score is a little bit confusing to me as to why he's scored so much worse this week, despite looking similar to last week's or last couple of weeks, and then especially in like a win as well. And then Mackenzie continued to have low CBAs, but didn't matter, scored well. Which I guess, like, if you're playing forward of the ball in a win, it makes sense. And you're also playing against like a lot of younger players, even though this is an older list, so that kind of helps too. But I mean, I think Mackenzie is one that potentially will come like crashing down. So just with that inconsistency in role, he might have a couple of these like high 90 scores, made 60k this week, but then all of a sudden drop like a 30 or a 40 or a 50 or something like that, just because the game's not played on the Hawks' terms, doesn't get exposed too much if he's not getting mid-time. So yeah, keep an eye on him because he's one, you know, their fixture I think starts to get a little bit harder. Oh no, after Geelong it's GWS, Crows, and then Dogs. So not too bad. But yeah, he's one that potentially could come out earlier. And then, Fergus Green we're going to talk about as well. So yeah, Warple, I've got no idea. What's his break even at now? Did he already completely kill at 50? So he's like, he can probably hold him for another week. That's really annoying though. Yeah, I'll have to have a look at what I can do with him in a minute. And then, yeah, people will be asking as well, like, can you trade Warple to Hopper? Which I probably wouldn't. I think like stop playing around with mid prices now. Maybe you could. I guess I'm a bit worried about Hopper's knee. And then Fergus Green, what's got a 51, making a little bit of money. That's all right. Job security seems to be good. Just keep chugging along. And then on the north side, I've been saying for a while now that Harry Sheezel's a keeper, and it doesn't look like that's changing anytime soon as long as he's a halfback. What's his priced at already? 300k. I mean, this is nuts. If you still didn't have Harry Sheezel, I would still recommend you get him, even at this point. Like, it's crazy. Zeeble had a bit of a disappointing game, to be honest. Once again, I didn't think he played particularly bad or anything like that. Only had the two clangers. Ball just didn't seem to go through him as much as we had in other weeks. So yeah, I'm happy to persist with this. He's still made 45k, so that's not too bad. He's still got this 123 in the system. So yeah, we'll at least get another nice week of price rise out of him, and then we'll assess from there. Definitely, like it's an interesting week. All these mid prices that we jumped on had poor weeks, and so the cash that we were hoping to make out of them looks like it may evaporate pretty quickly unless they have another big week to kind of kickstart their scoring. Anyone else worth talking about here? It's going to probably be Will Phillips, who is now on the bubble, I believe, after 2 games. So he's got a negative 52 break even. We'll have a look at all the break evens in a second to see where it fits in. But this is pretty nice. He's a good player. But North didn't have LDU, who we will touch on, or Simpkin this week. And the preference has been when those two are on the side that Phillips doesn't play. So look, he played all right this week, but does he just get kicked straight back out with those two coming back in? I think it's probably likely, which makes it hard to kind of put him in my trade plans. And then Goda had a poorer game. I don't know where he's at, but I mean, it's someone you can probably move on at some point, depending on what's going on, because you don't even really want to field him. What's he averaging? 52? break even 22. I mean, like, yeah, you can hold him for now, but just a rough option to have. All right, LDU. So, couple of things. One, what happened was really, really unlucky for LDU owners. And to be honest, there were like a lot of good bench scores, like maybe you had Chandler on the bench or Davey or something like that. So, look, it wasn't a complete disaster. Hopefully, most of you weren't copying like a 30 or a 40 or something like that in place of him. But yeah, just really unfortunate because even the ones that found out ahead of time couldn't do anything about it because the servers crashed. You got stuck with most people having traded in a 0. What do you do if he misses again this week? Will be a question someone will ask. I'd probably just hold, to be honest, at this point, depending on what your bench cover is. I doubt I'd be trading. Very few situations where I think that makes sense now. And it was just like a calf cork anyway, and then it felt a little funny in warm up, so they held him out, which I think that story's a little BS. I'm guessing that they did that to muck around with plans, knowing that Finn was probably going to be taking LDU, and then by leaving it until a late withdrawal, they couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, I mean, I'd hold him. I wouldn't be trading, and I probably wouldn't be jumping on him either, just given what he's coming off. And if you're one of those that got caught out, that's just super unlucky. Oh, and then Combin's made cash. Where's Combin at? Because he had a poorer week last week, but then he looked very good up forward this week. So he's got an 83, 12, 73. So he's made 43k. He's got a break even 11. If you're on him, great. That's fine. You can stay on him. GWS Carlton. Oh, this game hurts so much. So week 1, I boosted Kelly out for Cogs. Cogs beat my rookie that I would have had on field for looped Kelly by like 37. And then Kelly beat Cogs by basically 90 points this week. So yeah, it cost me a boost, a trade, and about 90 points to trade Kelly to Cogs at the like after Kelly got concussed. And I also like had Kelly captain for his 80 when he did get concussed. So that's been an absolute disaster for me. And just based on how Josh Kelly looks, he's like going to be a top 8 mid. So I probably want him back because at 582, that's pretty cheap. His break even's only 106 as well. So this is one you can probably wait a week on. They might give him some attention, although Green is deserving of attention as well. They probably just go head to head with Kelly, actually. Setterfield to Green. Yeah, that probably makes more sense. Green was good again, so like very happy to have him. 113 average for what we paid 530, so this is fine. Buckley, there was some chat about Buckley in the Discord, right? I mean, the boat's been missed on him now. He was 205, 900. It would have been an alternative option to Jones, Stocker, etc. Like interesting with him, I think he was a late in for Aaliyah in round 1 and then held his spot. And he's gone back to back 99s now. So his break even's 40, but I like can't imagine the scoring keeps up. He's already at 275k, so you need him to get to 425-ish to make a trade worthwhile. He's a better option than Bose if you were looking for someone this week, but I think you probably just like there's not too many cases where getting Buckley in makes sense. Unless once again you're looking to downgrade someone like Ridley so you can get Cameron up to someone expensive. GWS. Brent Daniels was someone that I talked about could have been a pick, and like well, how much has he gone up now? I mean, he's too far gone now, 237. Already gone up 45, break even to 3, but yeah. Would have been a good shout. Whitfield, no good. Cumming, no good. Ash was actually like okay, but I mean, not better than most of the other mid prices this week, to be fair. And then Rouston, who has done some nice things across the first couple of games. He's 139 or 140k as a mid, negative 23 break even on the bubble. So one you could consider. Who's there left to come in that would possibly knock him out? He's got 60% CBA's last 2 weeks. So that's pretty interesting. And like, yeah, Josh Kelly back over the 70%, Cogs up there. All right, yeah. I mean, Rouston's one you could consider. Only 64% time on ground is like weird though. Oh, and then Callahan's a bust. I mean, get away from this as soon as you can. Goes without saying. Like, that is an absolute must trade out. Connor Stone's like a 123k as well, but was the sub, came on, only got a 13. But keep an eye on. Blues, the defenders continue to go absolutely gangbusters over here against GWS. So that gives me some hope for Ridley for next week. Newman did a really good job on Toby Green from memory. Yeah, only kicked like a goal. Was well held by Newman, who then destroyed them the other way. Saad was good again. He must be close to like top defenders at the moment, which I was not keen on him as a pod, and he is absolutely going crazy. So there you go. Let's have a look at these defenders. Ryan had another good game. Dacos, Saad, Baker's up there. Sicily, Dawson, crazy. So Sicily, Dawson, and Dacos were probably like the three realistic ones too that you could have started. And then Day was a good option for sure. All right. Cripps, I mean, he had 42 touches, 20 contested, and did 112 SuperCoach. There were a few like really weird stat lines like that for the SuperCoach. Doherty was another one that was like that. Once again, 39 touches, 10 marks, a goal, and had a negative 50 ratio. So those that traded out Doherty last week would be pretty happy with this, but if I'm seeing him getting 39 touches, I don't expect a ratio like this every week. So I'm totally fine with that. Now let's have a look at his splits, because he is someone that I think did, that's ruck contests, which Patrick Cripps has got one. I think he got CBAs in here in this game. Yeah, so they did use him a little bit, 23%. And then let's have a look at these kick-ins. Only had the one, so declining each week. But I mean, he's getting the numbers, used in both positions, doesn't really matter. Just needs to get a little bit more efficient here, a few more contested, and this will fix up. But yeah, butchered it a little bit. Anyone else with him? Oh, Cowan was just so-so. I'm getting more and more worried about his job security, because he's looked okay without being great. Sincotta, who was the one that was competing with him for a spot, had 37 touches in the weekend. So that's probably not great for Cowan's job security. And then Hollands, I thought, was pretty good once again. I have a feeling he was like on 30 at quarter time though, and kind of just didn't get around it as much as the game went on. He definitely was playing more fat side, and there was a lot of the game where it was just stuck on the wing that he wasn't on, which is unfortunate. Now, I have a feeling Akers, who is the one that they primarily go through, might be out this week. So if that's the case, it should be good for Hollands. Hollands also has a nice matchup this week. So they're playing North. So yeah, the Carlton's fixture gets really good from here. So not worried about Doherty, not worried about Hollands, worried about Cowan's job security. And then, I mean, if you got any of these like pods like Sard, you'd be happy. Cripps hasn't been bad despite this being a very weird stat line. And Josh Kelly, I love and desperately want back on my side. Oh, and then Cogs. I mean, what is this? This Cogs, where are you? This is just shocking. 29 touches, but what, 7 clangers. Another one which is like, it's minus 30. I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, playing in the wet is interesting, but if this was like a 90, I wouldn't have cared as much. But it being a 58, oh, his break-even's got to be crazy high now as well, right? So people are going to be able to pick him up quite cheap. I guess you want to put on your watch list. 152, yep. He's got a good track record against Bombers, doesn't he? 106, 114, 154. All right, well, hopefully brings out a decent game then. Okay. Saints Essendon. So yeah, the 150th for the Saints, and they won and went 3-0, which is pretty crazy. Top of the ladder, 150% as well, and looked good despite having no steal. I think Mason Wood was obviously one of the highlights, but injured and now going to be out for a period of time, which probably saves me from having to answer questions about Mason Wood. I think interesting thing on here, but just to start with, is Bytel didn't get a gig despite still being out, which was unfortunate. I have a feeling he did well in the seconds, so one that could get a call up. But yeah, just hard to see where his spot is in this side, although I don't think Clark played particularly well. I mean, Brad Crouch should be a good option while Steele's out, but it's only going to be another month, so I probably wouldn't be jumping on that. Marshall got ratioed. We talked to a few ratios so far. And like the reason, I mean, I know we play SuperCoach, but the reason I look at the fantasy stuff as well is because it gives you a good feel for like whether they're getting enough of the ball and whether it's just like bad touch or like unfortunate circumstance for a game. Because I think the fantasy stuff can be a little bit more steady sometimes than the SuperCoach stuff. So, I mean, if you always had this bad ratio, which is like a trade of like, say, Matt Crouch, then that's a bad thing. Or like Taranto as well. You just need to keep that in consideration. But normally for someone like Marshall, I expect these to be like 1-to-1. So if he's getting 100 fantasy and only 78 SuperCoach, I kind of see like him reverting. This wasn't that bad of a game type thing. Draper's a decent defensive ruck at the moment. So, not too worried about Marshall. Stocker had a bit of a poor game. Kind of surprised he ended up on 70. This could have been much worse, to be honest, if you owned him. But I think fine to keep on with him. Kama was really good. I have a feeling he's one of the lowest break-evens of the game at the moment. We're going to do this at the end, so I really shouldn't do it now. But where is he? Fifth lowest break-even. So he's going gangbusters. 153k, made 51k already this week. That's huge. Oh. And then, yeah, I mean, he's better than Philippou in terms of SuperCoach for sure. Philippou. Essendon. All right. So we're going to get some Jordan Ridley venting out here. They benched him for 50% of the fourth quarter. The same thing they did for week 1, and for no real good reason apart from they wanted to lose the game. I'm not sure. This is like Ridley's had 2 games now that could have been 110 to 120s, and they've ended up low hundreds or 90s, which is very, very frustrating. I want to get out of this pick because the game plan is clearly not to put it through him as much as I would like it to be. He had 14 marks and didn't ton. So yeah, his contested marking was a little bit better this week. His spoiling was all right, but had clangers due to free kicks. Some unfortunate, some deserved. And yeah, I'm going to try and get out of this as quick as I can. I think the one to look at would be someone like Stewart, because he's on the bubble this week. He should drop some money. He's got a 161 break even. But then after this week, it's going to drop down to 61, depending on what. He just needs 100 this week and it drops down to 61. So he'll lose 26k. So maybe with 100k banked next week, I can go Ridley to Stewart, assuming that Ridley doesn't score too badly. His break even's 120. Yeah, I think I can probably do that in one trade next week, which might be a look. Essendon, I mean, yeah, Merritt and Parrish are both going to drop in cash. I think Merritt was being run with by Windhager at times, but it didn't look like it was a hard tag or anything like that. They've got it as a tag. I'm not sure. Davey kind of did the same thing he did last week, where he was very good for the first half and then faded out a little bit, but overall he's making nice money, so nothing to worry about there. Benzie had a bit of a down game, still kicked a goal. Setterfield. How can I forget about Setterfield? Yeah, many of us traded him and just underperformed a bit this week. So, look, still made 58k, which is great. Still got a break even of 4 because it's got that nice big 147. But yeah, I mean, he's one that, depending on how he scores over the next couple of weeks, is going to peak in price probably earlier than what we would have hoped. Getting him at 350, you kind of want him to get up to 500 and put some good points on the field. So let's just see how it goes. But when Essendon's not performing as well, he seems to be quite heavily affected by that. And that's what I saw in this game. Against GWS next week, which is one of his old clubs. So that should be a good game for him, you'd imagine. A bit of a revenge game. Okay. Showdown, which played at the same time as the Saints Bombers game, which is very unfortunate because this was a good game. I would have liked to have watched both of them. So yeah, didn't get to watch as much of this, just kind of tuned in and out. Things to call out is Rosie continues to be great. Yeah, good option. Glad I'm on him. It just looked very good. Every time I basically turned it on, he had the ball in the hand. And then outside of that, Port is irrelevant, I want to say. Like Butters is dropping in price. That I have any rookies worth mentioning apart from Sin did well on the 2s, who's 123k defender mid, so he might get a game at some time in the near future. And then on the Crow side, Dawson played well, probably wasn't deserving of the medal. I think someone like Ranking or Phil Thorpe could have put their hands up with 4 and 5 goals respectively. I think Ranking in particular. Laird, I didn't think this game was particularly good from him, but Supercoach deemed it quite differently. I guess like 18 contested helps a lot. And he had 4 clangers, and 3 of those were free. So he only had 1 clanger with ball in hand, but 65% disposal efficiency. Bit weird. So from a fantasy perspective, I think like Laird had 1 game under 90 all last year, and he's already had 2 in the first 3 games. So I'm a little bit worried about Laird, although I think Berry being injured, which I'm pretty sure he was in this game, a hamstring, I want to say, might help Laird over the next couple of weeks, just losing that like similar type in the midfield. His CBAs, I imagine, are all fine. Yeah, I mean, still holding at 80s is a great number. Rochelle continues to be good. Oh, Dawson, that's right. I forgot to mention Dawson basically played midfield for this week and scored well in that role too. Yeah, I wonder if they persist with that, like, because they obviously won with him in there, and he was talking about being one of the best midfielders. It probably is good for Supercoach, bad for other formats. Michelini was good as well, so he's unfortunately not on the bubble anymore. Went up 50k, so not really. I like at 188k. I'm not someone I'm really considering grabbing, but yep. If you jumped on him for any reason, then you would have loved what you saw. And then Pedler was very good, kicked the 3 goals, but got suspended for a week. I reckon they'll challenge that. I don't know if they'll be successful in getting overthrown, but just keep an eye on that space. Not one to jump off yet, just given he's still got more money to make, but it could be inconvenient for a week. Gold Coast, Geelong. So this is starting to get into the Sunday games. So Stewart came back from injury, absolutely crushed it. 167 Supercoach. So I thought we were going to get some pretty big price drops out of him. Not to be the case. Now, with both of these teams, they've got that really nice buy. So the players that we're looking at here are like Witts, Miller, Stewart as all options that you might want to get in your side because it'll just help you through the buy rounds. Miller, I thought looked good in this game. Again, I think he's looked good for most of this year, actually. One that had kind of that interrupted preseason, but has looked, I think, all right. Still dropped 23k so far with a 110 average. His fixture opens up a little bit. St Kilda, Freo, North, Richmond now in the next 4. So for whatever reason you are looking at a mid, like that is someone that could be a little bit of a point of difference given he is, 11 or like nearly 12% owned. Yeah, but yeah, keep an eye on him. Thought he looked all right. I mean, shout out to Raul, who continues to look amazing. 18 contested again. He's just such a beast. And then Witts looks good in this game. Probably not surprising against Stanley, but yeah, 124. It's a nice score. Worthy of his price tag. And then, yeah, Stewart, just crazy. I was hoping I'd get him cheaper, but it's probably not going to be the case. So Ridley to him in one trade might be pretty nice if I can make that work. Bose was one that people were looking at. And yeah, I just don't think the role's there, especially with Stewart back on the side. So I would leave that alone. Radigley looked like he'd have a good game, but ended up with a 47. I think it just continues to be a slow burn. It's some ruck cover if you need it, but yeah, not excited about that pick. Melbourne, Sydney. So Oliver went crazy here, and to be honest, this could have maybe been even bigger. Kick the 2 goals at this ratio. I mean, like, this is the stuff that's crazy. This is like plus 45. We're looking at some of those others, like Cripps was even, Doherty was negative 50, and I just felt like some of the scaling or like point attribution in these games isn't even necessarily scaling, just didn't feel like it passed the sniff test for me. Laird was another one. Owners will be happy, non-owners won't be. Is what it is, but yeah, just interesting. Oh, Grundy, yeah, we'll have to talk about in a second. We'll come back to Grundy. Chandler was very good. I mean, yeah, this is just it's probably too hard to jump on him, which is crazy. But he's made 83k this one round. I'm guessing only Sheasel made more money in the week. And yeah, he's 207k now. Their fixture is pretty good with West Coast Essendon over the next 2, so should continue to make money here. He's an every week on-field option as well. In fact, he's 85. He's ahead of Ashcroft, McKenzie, Warple now. So I really should be trying to find a way to get Chandler on field. McVee had a good bounce back for anyone that has him. I was saying jump off. I actually wonder if like Hibbert in the side has freed up McVee. Wasn't watching him specifically just because not really relevant to me anymore. But yep, and like with Salem out, he should be fine. Oh, Van Ruin, the rookie that was promised was in our teams for a lot of the preseason, and yeah, he had a great debut game. I probably wouldn't bring him in too early. I'd wait to see another week just because key forward scoring can be pretty up and down, but one that we will be looking at as a downgrade option next week for sure, depending on what's going on in our teams. So, for example, if Warple puts out another poor game and say maybe Zeeble or like Setterfield put out a poor game, you could be looking at like trading Setterfield and Warple, get Van Roen in, Chandler on the field, something like that, and then upgrade to someone in the midfield. Maybe it's a Stewart, maybe it's a Oliver, maybe it's a Josh Kelly, something like that. So start looking ahead, because if you're not trading these guys in next week, then you can start kind of thinking about plans for next week. And then Grundy. All right, so Grundy played Laddams, who is not a good ruck, gives up a lot of points. But people will be asking, can I bring in Grundy for Darcy Cameron? Given that he dropped the price, he's 4K, but now he's got a pretty reasonable break even. He's got West Coast this week, BJ Williams. We just saw him give a big score to Darcy, and he gave a big score to Flynn before that, and whoever else the week before that. But then after West Coast, he's got Essendon, Richmond, and then after around about that time, Gawn's coming back. So I don't really like Grundy as a trading option because I think he may score well over the next 2 to 3 weeks. But honestly, there was lots of this game against the Swans. He didn't look good. He got outbodied by Heaney in the Swans forward 50 for Heaney to have a shot at goal. Like there's just stuff like that. It just didn't look good. So I don't think he's playing particularly well at the moment. And Gawn's only 3 or 4 weeks away. And as soon as Gawn's back, Grundy scoring is probably going to revert back to what we saw closer to week 1 and 2, which was 69-74 over the first couple of games. You're going to have to trade him back out at that point. He's not a cash grab. He's not a keeper. I wouldn't be going Darcy Cameron to Brodie Grundy. So yeah, just cut that off at the head there. Swan side. Yeah, they did not score well. Goulden looked like he was going to have a much worse score than this, and then recovered it with, a nice goal, some nice holding the ball tackles. Yeah, just a very good player. Down week for sure, but he's still been a 102 average for someone we paid for 74. So, yeah, can't be upset with that at all. I still think he looks like a keeper. Swans aren't going to be beaten too many weeks in, and especially like pretty convincingly like that. Whoa, click the last one. And then last one was the Derby. Is that how they say it? Out west. Firstly, shout out to Jaden Hunt, who is my fantasy team. This 84, like back-to-back 80s is huge for the lad. So very thrilled with him. Okay, so Sarong won best on ground. Darcy let traders like myself and non-owners off the hook pretty badly. This could have been a 160 to 200, honestly, with how he's tracking in the first half. Kicking goals, clunking marks. You can see he had 52 hit-outs. Jackson had 17, and then BJ Williams just had 14. Like, watching them, Shrek was like 2 feet taller than him without jumping off the ground. So just putting his hand up and tapping every ball. I think the big change in the second half is they stopped trying to ruck to BJ, and they were very consciously trying to ruck to Darcy. And so players like Gimby were sharking a lot of those hitouts, and I think that hurt Darcy a fair bit in the second half, and why that scoring came back. But yeah, I mean, he was pretty good, but it's a 132 on BJ Williams. Yeah, like it's just not that impressive. We should just have a quick look at the CBAs. So 75%, so about the same as last week. And then ruck contests, 70-30, so better split than last week. That's good, not as good as week 1. But I think it's pretty unpredictable to know what's going to happen week to week. And to be honest, Darcy started popping off as well when Jerry McGovern and was it Shuey went down, like their first couple of injuries. And you also had at the same time, what's his name? Barras. You had Barras go off as well with a chin knock. And that's when Darcy really started to get a hold, because they just didn't have the tall timber to defend him. I swear, like Hunt, for example, was actually like trying to spoil him at times. It was just not a good matchup. Like the height difference is so huge. So yeah, I think a lot went right for Freo in this game. they still did not look good to me. They didn't impress. I thought West Coast like had the moral victory for sure, despite not getting the win. They were on one player on the bench for most of this. I felt like at least a half. Probably wasn't that long because McGovern and Shuey were both first half, right? Shuey was quarter two. Yep, McGovern was quarter two, so they were down to 2 at least at halftime. Witherden was Q2 as well. Yeah, so they and then Cripps was quarter three. So coming out of halftime, then they had 2 on the bench. Then they lost Cripps another. They had Ryan come off after he came down heavy as well. Like they had one player for like a half as their rotation. All right. So yeah, I mean, Sarong, by the way, I think really benefited from them dropping Brody. Just because it meant he could play that more like inside role, which is, I think, more natural to him. If we look at CBAs here, did they shoot up? It was about the same as the first 3 weeks. They were running Aish a lot. That's interesting. Playing an outside game, he was not. Not if he was getting that many CBAs. And then, wait, Brayshaw was still normal amount, right? He just had a bad game. Brayshaw's had 3 bad games in a row. What's his price start? People aren't going to be interested in him just because of how like poor scoring has been. He's going to be very cheap though. He's going to be so he's 573k. Sorry, you can't see this on my screen. He's 573k with a 139 break even. He's already lost 42k. If he goes 100, he loses another 16k. Gets down to like 560 next week. That's a very cheap option. The problem is like they've already played most of their easy schedule, and that's what you thought he would have done well on. So maybe he's not an option. Hard to know. If he gets cheaper than 550k, you might not have an option but to pick him up. And then West Coast side. So yeah, Gimby, as I mentioned, 104, very good, making big bucks. Great rookie to have in our defense line, averaging 89. I don't think this is going to keep up. But yeah, he's very good to watch. He's basically West Coast best player already. Tackles hard. Just really like how he goes about it. Chesser, I traded this week. He ended up with a 42, which is not too bad. I decided to keep Constable just in the chance that Constable comes back. This means that Chesser actually beat his break even, right? He went up 8k, break even of 7. That's nice. Can make a little bit more money. I just struggled to see him making enough, so I kind of took the risk on someone coming back in for Constable. But this does put me in a bit of a vulnerable position if Cowan gets dropped as well, and then I've got 2 dead players on the bench. Maybe I should have kept Chesser, but do I really ever want to field Chesser? I'm not sure. Not sure about that. Cole, for anyone that picked him up, 80, did well. And then Hewitt, wasn't this his debut game? I didn't think it was his second game. Hold on. Oh, he played a game last year. Okay. 34, I mean, yeah. Another week until he's on the bubble anyway. Okay, so let's quickly talk about my team then. I think I'm in an okay spot, just given that I've got all the value. The things that are most concerning are obviously Cogs, but I'm probably just going to hold him there because he's a keeper. Try not to overreact to that. Warple, because that was not good. 45, even though I didn't think he looked that bad. He's probably got 1 more week I can wait with him before I have to do something. And then really, I'm not that concerned with anyone else. I mean, Ridley is probably 1 more week, and then I just go straight to Stewart. Have a look at some break evens here. Cowan, 16. I mean, these are all good. Good break evens. Sheezel's still negative 60 and he's 300k. That's crazy. All right, let's have a look at the players then. First thing, let's have a look at break evens. Probably the most important thing. So Marty's put in 2 big games. Not someone I'd be looking at in case you're asking. Yeah, I think that's a no. Yeah, Phillips we kind of already mentioned. Just depends whether he gets games. Kammer I've missed, but he's still got a negative 50 break even. He's looked very good so far. It's probably helped the Saints have won 3 games, but hey, they might keep winning. Baker and Chandler both been good. Brockman had his first game. I didn't mention him. He looked good playing for them, but it's one of the few wins they're going to have for the year. So it's pretty hard to trust him as a smaller forward type. Van Ruin I probably like more just because of where he's at in his development as well as where Melbourne's at. Buckley we touched on, probably too late to jump on now. Noah Long has been surprisingly very, very good. This is actually one that I would have loved to have had over like Fergus Green in hindsight. Both cheaper and he's played well despite West Coast not being particularly great. Young, we mentioned, probably not an option. Rouston might be the pick of the bunch for those that are on the bubble this week. Crozier's a no, he dropped to 49. Ewan got dropped. Holland's fixture's nice. King's a no. Oscar Allen had a very good game. So, I mean, this is one that we kind of were a bit cold on. But yeah, he's cash gen will get going really nicely now. He went up 50k already. And with that 97 his system, he's going to make good money for anyone on him. McVee, Bose, Hunt, Jones. I mean, yeah, Bytel if he gets another game. But even then, you can wait a week. And then Day. Okay, there's really not too much to talk about. I guess we could look the other way for any premiums here that we have to get rid of. I mean, most of these people have been dropped or not popular. Doherty's the highest one up there that's popular. And Stewart that we looked at. And that's about it. Oh, and Cogs. Yeah, it sucks to have a couple of these guys that are in here. I'll tell you what. Okay, so yeah, as I kind of mentioned, Darcy Cameron trade options, that's going to be the one people are asking about. I think the number one ruck in the game is English at the moment. So if you can get to English, that is 100% what I would be doing. But if you can't get to English, I think my second option would be Wits. However, there's only a 1,300 price difference between the two. So if you can't get to English, I don't know how you're getting to Wits. Below them, it's really hard. Like, I guess you could go to Darcy for whatever reason you believe in that, like Sean Darcy, but I think that's going to bring you more pain. And a lot of people that got onto Darcy Cameron came from Sean Darcy anyway, I have a feeling. So to go back the other way would be quite painful, even though he's only 540k, which is very cheap. I would probably prefer Darcy to Grundy, who people will talk about at 510k. But as I kind of explained, with 3 to 4 games before Gorn comes back, assuming that all goes well, I think his lifespan as someone that you want on your side is very limited, but maybe that's better than someone like Darcy who could go back to not being as well next week. If you wanted some out there options, I guess you could look at Nankervis, who's been very good, as long as Solido stays out of the side. Flynn I wouldn't look at. Rob I probably wouldn't look at. And that's probably about it. I don't think there's anyone else really mentioning. Okay, so in terms of trade plans this week, I think it's going to be hold still, do nothing for me. I think that makes sense. We'll see what happens with injuries and whatnot. But there is one thing I wanted to look at, which is like if I wanted to play aggressive, this is very like fantasy style. If I got someone like Day in, which gave me 194k, would I be able to say get Warple to Kelly? But I can't. So that probably saves me from doing this because this is probably something I would do if I could. I could do it with someone like Setterfield, but I don't think that's worth it. Which is good. I'll probably step back from this trade, wait 1 week, and get hopefully Ridley to Stewart in one trade. So yeah, I'm priced out by 7k at the moment. Otherwise, I'd do it right now. But I think with Ridley has a nice matchup against GWS. Stewart has 161 break even. They probably should end up slightly closer in price after next week, and then I could do this in one. In terms of like team setup itself, I would love to not have one of Wilmot or Cowan on the field and instead have Chandler on the field. Like this is definitely costing me points each week at the moment with how this is set up. But there's probably not a lot I can do to get around it because I'd need to put another defender into the side to make this happen, which I don't really have a way of doing at the moment. So it could be waiting until Sheasel and Zeeble get DPP in a couple weeks, and then I can trade someone out and move them back down there. But yeah, there's just not a way for me to fix that at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. I could bring off, I could like move like Rosie into the midfield and take off Mackenzie or Ashcroft or something like that for Chandler. And to be honest, if Baker hadn't scored well this week, that might be what I would have done. But yeah, the matchups this week, I mean, Chandler's got West Coast, Holland's got North, Baker's got Richmond, which is probably the worst of those three. But awesome, nice stuff there. Hawks have got Geelong, so once again, a little bit worried about like Mackenzie and Warple. But yeah, I think no trades is probably good. Hold as gold. We're getting to that time of year where you want to start now conserving a little bit before we get into upgrade season. So unless you've got forced trades through injury, I probably wouldn't be overly aggressive, especially given how many trades backfired this week, just in terms of trading out or in certain players. At some point, you just have to back in your selections and ride the wave of week to week variance. Captain, vice captain this week is going to be interesting. So, I mean, English basically seems like a vice captain or captain option every week this week. I don't know if I love it against Curvis, but yeah, I mean, like English against Richmond could be good. What's his history? 96, 50, 103. Not great against the Tigers. If I had Josh Kelly against Essendon, yeah, I'd probably consider that. Oh, Dacos against the Lions. The Lions might send Berry to him. So that kind of worries me a little bit. If it's not Berry, maybe someone else they've got. If you've got Oliver against West Coast, I think he's actually one of his worst performing teams, but that makes a lot of sense to look there. And Laird against Freo, I'd still back him in as a vice captain option. I could look at Doherty against North. Is his history good against them? 91, 66, 124? Not really. Green against St Kilda with none of the big bodies. I mean, once again, he may cop a Windhager tag, though. And then we've got Dunkley against Collingwood, which could be good, but just given how good Collingwood's been, I think there's a good chance that they sack up all those points. Oh, it could be someone like Sheasel, VC against Carlton. What have Carlton been like giving up to defenders? Oh. Oh, no, none of them did well for GWS, right? Yeah, maybe not. Uh-oh. Captain, vice captain's going to be hard again. All right, it's probably going to end up being English just because he's got the ceiling. And then captain might be Cogs bounce back or Green. Oh, I don't like these options this week. Maybe English is captain. And the vice is like Sheasel or Dacos. Or... yeah, okay, I've got to figure that out. So yeah, if you've got Laird or Oliver, I like those as options this week. Wits has Marshall, so I probably wouldn't be looking at either of those two. Darcy plays against Rob, which I can't imagine is a great matchup, so that's probably not a realistic one either. I don't think you'd ever put the captain on Sicily, despite how well he's been scoring. So it's another week where the captains just haven't looked that good because the mids haven't fired that well. And then final thought for this week, I will say I have a feeling that Guns and Rookies really had a good week this week over mid prices. A lot of the mid prices didn't fire. And on top of the rookies I've got, and I think I've pretty much got all of them. I think like Noah Long's the other one that you could have got that did really well. So I just have a feeling like, oh, and you also had like Radaglia and Combin and Kammer. So really you could have like cut down on maybe another forward, paid up a little bit, had less of these mid prices, or maybe no Zeeble, had the extra rookie here, and that would have been a nicer setup. Not sure. It's funny how it changes week to week. I was really confident with how this looked at the end of last week, and hopefully the cash that it generates is good. But yeah, obviously not a good week for me, despite everything kind of going okay for the most part. The Cogs over Kelly thing is probably the biggest hurt, where if I had the extra 90 points there, my rank ends up being okay. All right, but I think I might wrap it up there. I've kind of rambled through everything. Just like quick summary, I think no trades is probably what makes sense for most teams this week, unless you have an injury, in which case there's probably some more interesting things you can do. Like, for example, you could look at getting a day in, if freeing up that money and let you get English or Wits rather than a more compromised ruck. Warple is probably a 1 week hold, just given his break even's 50, which he should be able to do. If he scores well, he can reset it. If he doesn't, then he's someone that we move on next week. Setterfield may be in a similar boat, to be honest, which would be really disappointing if those two only lasted a couple of weeks. And the good thing is we've already got the rookie target downgrade next week in Van Ruin, so that's the one I'd be keeping an eye on. We might also get some debuts that I mentioned, like so Fahey for GWS did like 40 touches in the twos. Voss for Essendon kicked 4 goals in the twos, should get a debut this week. Sin for Port had a good game as well. Heath for the Saints, who's a forward, kicked like 5 goals. Bit hard to break into a side that's winning, but another one that could get a look at some point. So there's a few rookies that we may get as debutants or like second gamers over the next couple of weeks. Bytel could come back, and then Phillips is the other one that maybe keep an eye on if he gets named this week. But that is everything. So I was trying to do a summary and I went over it. Only trade if you've got injuries this week. Otherwise, I think try and conserve. Keep an eye on what's around the corner for next week. Leave any questions or comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Peace.